And 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to Leadership Sketches, our weekly reality check on creative leadership. Every week in 10 minutes or less, I want to share ideas and best practices on creativity, leadership, and everything in between. This is our 7th sketch, and we titled this sketch The Paradox of Choice. I was having a discussion with a friend of mine about how complex has become the handling and the management or the development of new resources, especially human resources, right? And I want to focus on 3 key points. The first point is this conflict that we see between the classic organization, we can say, and the new generations. The second point, I want to offer some reflection on these points and see how we can rethink about this conflict. And the third point is offer a way or a perspective, or I would call it a reconciliation. How do we reconcile these comments that we see? If we break down this sketch and we place the classic corporations on the left, right? And on the right, we have our new generations. That's represented with an emoji. And here we can have Gen Z and Gen Y, which also applied to the discussion of the millennials. And there is a wonderful talk about this topic from Simon Sinek as well. And the classic corporation, or the narrative, we can say, the narrative that we hear nowadays is that basically a lot of executives or classic corporations say that new generation are entitled, they are fundamentally lazy, and they are inconsistent. So if we take this perspective and we try to reflect a little bit deeper on what if we could look at this paradigm, this paradox, in a little bit in a different way. And as I was having this discussion with my friend, I offered my perspective, having dealt with this new generation for almost a decade in my university year. So entitlement, where does this concept of entitlement comes? The entitlement comes basically from what this new generation are exposed to, a abundance of choice. They have so many choices that we didn't have when we were entering the business world. Nowadays, you can study Python online and then go and be a digital nomad in Bali, where the cost of life is a quarter of any big city. And you can make a decent living with that. So when we started, we didn't have so much choices. And also, the whole process, I remember the LinkedIn was starting, and the process of finding a job and looking for a job was much more complicated than it is today. The entitlement doesn't come necessarily from this just a bad attitude, but mainly because of the choices that this new generation has. Particularly if they are talented, particularly if they are well adverse. So they do have much more choices than we have. The concept of being lazy is related to this concept of choice. Lazy means that in the corporation you tend to see and you tend to look that they are not as dedicated as they used to be. But the reality is that now this new generation has more interests. And they are also a little bit more curious, I would say, of the external world, of what is not the work environment. And this links to the third point, which is this concept of inconsistency. Inconsistency, in reality, if we look a little bit deeper to it, is the fact that almost every one of my students, as they started, they will also try to do something else. Many of them had what is called a side hustle. And this is, I believe, a consequence of this exposure of social media and all the opportunities also that the new internet economy has brought. So they could have a 9-to-5 job and then have, especially the people that I was dealing with, so they were creatives, designers, photographers, they also had opportunities to do other works rather than their 9 to 5. And this, it's double linked because they do have this incredible pressure, and I believe it's called the fear of missing out, that is driven by seeing all these opportunities coming up. And just look at your feed on Instagram and 1001 ways to become a millionaire. And basically they are trying to do a lot of things at once and not necessarily concentrating only on one thing, which makes them become unfocused. They are not as dedicated or as focused as before. So what I would like to offer as a reconciliation option from the corporation, we have to be very clear on our purpose and also on the impact that we can offer these new generations. So the fact that by joining our corporation, joining in our organization, they have a greater opportunity to impact the world as well. So they have an opportunity to have a greater impact that they could have by working alone. And on the other side, from this new generation, yes, it's true, you can have a pretty decent career on your own, being a digital nomad. But what you are losing here is the opportunity for growth and the opportunity of building long-lasting relationships that not necessarily you're going to obtain if you work by yourself. So as usual, if you enjoyed this sketch and you want to reflect a little bit more on these topics, subscribe, sign up. And as usual, I'm Gianluca Cinquepalmi, and until next sketch, don't forget, inspire, challenge, and disrupt.